that deals with the mitzvot. And we start with a blessing, right? Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshenu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu, la'asok b'divrei Torah. Okay. Ivan, I see you. Good. Okay. Susan, fine. Okay. And hopefully the other people will be getting on. Okay. I actually am, we're trying today from home. That's why I don't need, I'm not wearing the mask. Okay. All right. Now, I just want to do a quick review in hopes that other people will be joining, and then we'll get to new material today. Remember, we said we're studying Sefer HaChinuch, the book of mitzvah education, where the author, 14th century Sephardic rabbi, took each of the psukim that dealt with as a basis for a mitzvah, based on the list of 613 established by Rambam, organized them by the portion of the week, and then attempts to tell us specifically what we've called the foundation pasuk is in that parsha, what explaining aspects of that verse, of that pasuk. He then goes ahead and explains some of the laws, and we're looking to see where did he get the information, I'll put it that way, that he derives primarily from sources in the Talmud, the Mishnah, Midrash, right? But occasionally he does resort to Rishonim, to early authorities, particularly the Rambam. Afterwards, he then explains to us where this law now is applicable. And last time, we focused on a somewhat more complicated example of the prohibition of eating milk and meat. Today, we're going to go back to a more ethical mitzvah, okay? And we're going to see that here too, he embellishes our author on explaining this verse, this pasuk. By doing so, embellishing, what I'm referring to is the fact that rather than simply citing the example, well, in such and such a place in the Talmud, the rabbis, our sages, etc. say, okay, and just referring to it in passing. In this particular example, and we may discuss a little bit more detail why, he actually cites for us some of the actual Talmudic or Mishnaic text. In addition, what we're going to see in this particular example, and the reason I chose it, is because while the verse, the pasuk itself, is fairly straightforward, he takes us on a trip, if you will, a voyage to see from this basic mitzvah, there are 2 or 3 other concepts that can be connected to it that have significant rabbinic implications. Rabbinic in the sense that Chazal, the rabbis, expanded this and made these concepts very applicable, okay, to everyday life. Okay, so having said that, hopefully okay, we've got to get Andrea, all of a sudden, I see you said that the host disabled participant screen sharing. So I'm having a problem.
Sorry, I'm on mute. I'm shouting at the screen. I just fixed it. Sorry, I realized I was on mute, but I was talking to you. I just
Okay.
fixed it. You should be able to screen share now, hopefully.
Yes. Okay.
Yes?
Very good.
Okay, I'm putting myself back on mute.
Okay. There we go. Okay. We're actually, all right. We're looking here at the Sedra Kadoshim. All right. I'm going to make it a little bit larger. Okay. That I can do now on my own machine. All right. See, Sedra Kadoshim. And mitzvah number 236, the prohibition of gossiping slanderously. Okay. Now, as we've seen before, he wants to suggest a foundation pasuk. Okay. So if we look at it, what verse did he choose from this parsha in Leviticus 19:16? Okay. There it is in the Hebrew, Lo telech rachil, and it's translated, you shall not go about as a talebearer. Now, it's only one problem. That's not the only way to translate this pasuk. In fact, what we're going to see in a moment, that he suggests that there are other ways to translate the pasuk. So it may be necessary for us to examine those other explanations of the meaning of the pasuk. So he first tells us, okay, what does it mean not to be a talebearer? Okay, this means that if we hear a man telling something bad about his fellow, okay, we should not go to him and tell him, so-and-so is saying this and this about you. Okay. However, he now puts a limitation on that. Okay. Unless it is our intention to remove or avoid injury or to stop a quarrel. What made him make this limitation? Okay. He doesn't tell us. However, I would suggest that, remember, many of us might be familiar with the story about Aaron. Ohev shalom v'rodef shalom. Okay, that Aaron was one who loved peace and went after peace. And if he heard someone say something bad regarding an individual, he would go to each person and indicate, well, this one really wants to apologize, but they don't know how. They don't know what to say. And he would bring the two parties together. So I'm suggesting that in this case, that's why he puts this exclusion, if you will, this limitation on his definition of talebearing. Now, that still doesn't explain to us why he chose this pasuk. But then he goes on. Our sages of blessed memory said in explanation of the word rachil, talebearer. So he's going to give us multiple explanations. One example based on the language itself. Rach, soft or kind to one, and harsh to another. Okay? Now, where might he have gotten that particular explanation? Okay, it's possible that he derived it from the Mechilta, a rabbinic midrash, okay, on the book of Vayikra, or it's possible that he derived it from the Talmud. Okay, and if we look at one source in the Talmud, okay, we find the following. Whence is the warning against bringing up an evil name deduced Rabbi Eliezer said, "From thou shalt not go up and down as a talebearer," okay? Citing our particular verse. Okay, now that may be appropriate, but then to further clarify, okay, the use of the word Rachil, he gives a second explanation. Another meaning, do not be as a Rochel, a peddler, loading up with words and going to peddle them. Now, again, he derives this probably from the Talmud as well. Okay. Now, one problem that we might have in that is that if we look for that source in the Talmud, okay, we don't find it. We really don't find that reference. Okay. But the concept we understand. The concept being that one may, as a peddler, hear certain things about a person, okay, and then, as a result, share it when he goes to the next home, the next location. And so that conceptually is where he may draw that model. Okay. Now, having given us our foundation verse, okay, the next question we say is, what's the basis? Okay, or as he calls it in the Hebrew, Mishorshei HaMitzvah, the root of the precept. Okay, what's the reason? Okay. Now, remember what we've learned so far, in that his attempt to explain a reason for the verses, okay, is something that leads him into the various details of the verse. So he tells us, the reason that the eternal Lord desires good for the human beings he created, in other words, he wants some sort of a positive interaction among human beings. Hence, he commanded us about this so that there should be peace among us. For evil gossip is a cause of contention and quarrel. Okay? So, in other words, argument, quarrel, contention does not bring about a good and a peaceful society. And therefore, his concern that if someone is a talebearer, if someone says to person X, do you know that Y is spreading rumors about you? Or Y is putting you down? What is that going to create in terms of the relationship among the people? Okay. Now, having suggested that as the rationale for this choice of verse, he now wants to clarify even in more detail, what does he mean? What do we call this spreading of information? Let's put it that way for the moment, okay? In regards to one individual by another. Well, we all know, okay, that it does have a very particular name, and that's what he tells us here in the next paragraph, right? Lashon hara. And that's what he says is what the Talmud and the Midrash define, okay, as spreading misinformation. I'll use that term about an individual. That's what he says. The sages gave us about evil gossip and its partner, slander. Now, one thing most of the time when we translate the term Lashon Hara or Lashon Hara, right? We simply understand it as gossip about a person. Is there a difference between gossip, let's say, and a slander? Okay. Well, here again, okay, the Gemara, he's telling us, tries to clarify that and spells it out. Okay. Now, in doing so, he again is going to cite various examples from the Talmud and the Midrash. They taught distinctly. Okay. He's referring to the sages. Okay. And he now begins to tell us in this paragraph some examples. And I want to share part of it with you again as he cites some of these cases. Okay? That they, in a number of examples, he takes it directly from the Talmud and includes it right here in his text. So, for example, he tells us that slander brings death to the one who says it, to the one who receives it, and the one about whom it is told, but most of all, to the one who receives it. Okay? Now, does the Talmud actually recite that? If we look at an example directly in the Talmud, we see the following in Arachim, okay, Gemara Arachim, the following. In the West, in other words, in Palestine, they say the talk about third persons. In other words, third persons meaning the subject of the gossip or the subject of the slander. Okay? Kills three persons. Him who tells the slander, him who accepts it, and him about whom it is told. So by sharing evil Lashon Hara, okay, you are impacting on three individuals, not just about the one on whom it's said, but the listener and the speaker. Okay? And how does he connect it with the fact that this could bring about death? By the very next section in the same piece of Talmud. Rabbi Chama ben Chanina said, what is the meaning of the verse? Death and life are in the power of the tongue. Has the tongue a hand? It tells you that just as the hand can kill, so can the tongue. One might say that just as the hand can kill only near it, thus also the tongue can kill only one near it. And then he cites another pasuk, another verse. Their tongue is like a sharpened arrow. So he draws the connection through various verses and ends with a section from Rabbi in the Talmud. He who wants to live can find life through the tongue. He who wants to die can find death through the tongue. Okay? And we know, okay, that we have a verse from Psalms, Lo regal elishono, lo asa l're'ehu ra'ah. Thou hath no slander upon his tongue, nor doeth evil to his fellow. Not only that, but I'm sure some of us have heard of the Chafetz Chaim, okay, who has a famous book all about Lashon Hara, encouraging people not to recite it. Mi ha'ish hechafetz Chaim, citing the verse, who is the person who wants life? Natzor Lashon Chamera, Usvatehem medaber mirma. Citing another place, another source again. Okay? So we see this example, okay, of his implying that one who indulges in lashon hara, in slander, in evil gossip, not only does he create a difficult situation among the individuals, but it causes a problem in the community and can result in death. Now, what's interesting for us to see is that he didn't stop citing there, but he went on to give us another example. And many of us, I'm sure, are familiar with the idea, the concept of siyag l'Torah, putting a fence around the Torah. In other words, in order to prevent someone from doing a sin, okay, the rabbis enacted call it a fence, a barrier, a limitation, not allowing you to reach the point of committing the sinful act. Okay? And that's what he's going to point out to us, that in order to attempt to prevent people from speaking lashon hara, from slander or evil gossip, there is something called avak lashon hara, the dust of evil speech or evil gossip. And he gives us the following example. If a person has in his family record one who was hanged, okay, from the gallows. In other words, if there's a certain family or historical background regarding an individual, you don't say to the person, hang up this fish. Again, clearly an example from the Talmud. Okay? What does he say? He chooses it from the following. Says the Gemara in Baba Metzia. Rabbi Nathan said, do not taunt your neighbor with a blemish. Thus, it says, if there is a case of hanging in a person's family record, say not to him, hang this fish up for me. Okay? In other words, the implication is that he tells us the result is that it will cause the person bad feelings. Okay? And that one needs to be sensitive to the fact that this may cause, again, this tension, not only among certain individuals, but within the community. Okay? Now, having presented this idea of lashon hara for us, and even what we call avak lashon hara, the dust of lashon hara, one might think again that he was finished with this topic. Okay? And in a sense, that is why he goes on now to his next stage of explanation, which is, where is this law applicable? And he tells us it is in the force everywhere, at every time, for both men and women. See? So both men and women are expected to be aware of lashon hara. Okay? If a person transgresses it and slanders with his tongue, okay, that's tied into the verse that I shared with you from Psalms. Okay? He violates a negative precept. That is a lav, a negative prohibition. Okay? But he says in any case that malkot, the punishment of lashes, is not given in terms of this negative precept because it was an oral statement and not a physical act. Fine. We understand that he's trying to explain to us, again, what the punishment might be under such situation. Okay? However, it's in this new paragraph that we're going to just start for a few minutes today and then pick up next time that he's going to introduce a brand new concept to us. Okay? And that concept is particularly significant from the time of the Middle Ages. It occurred in the time of the rabbis as well, but particularly in the time of the Middle Ages. Okay? And what is that concept? It is one that's known as the informer, which in Hebrew is called a moser. Okay? Now, I said that it was apparently the case at the time of the rabbis. And in fact, we have a number of examples, again, from the Talmud, in this case in the Gemara Baba Kama, okay, that gives us an example. Case number 1. There was a certain man who showed a silk ornament of Rabbi Abba to potential robbers. Okay? The man was brought up on charges. Okay? So the question was, would the rabbis find him liable because he showed this item to these potential robbers? Or another case, a certain man had a silver cup which had been deposited with him, and being attacked by thieves, he took it and handed it over to them. Now, is he liable? Is he to be held guilty for taking somebody else's property and giving it to the thieves, moser, informing them, handing it over? Or do we say, no, he did it to save his life, and therefore under such circumstances, he should be exempt? Another case, a certain man had a purse of money for the redemption of captives. He was attacked by thieves who took it and he handed it over to them. Okay. What happens? Is this man liable for that money, community money, and must he pay it back? Okay. Or to save his life, will he be held unaccountable? In that particular case, okay, he was declared exempt. I want to share one other example. Again, it seems a little far-fetched, but I think it's appropriate. A certain man managed to get his donkey on a ferry boat before the people in the boat had gotten onto shore. The boat was in danger of sinking. So a certain person came along and pushed the donkey over the side of the boat onto the river. The donkey drowned. The case was brought before one of the rabbis. Okay. And another rabbi there, was that person not rescuing himself by means of another man's money? So again, we find in all of these cases that the person is moser. He's informing, handing over, giving something that's really not his, and it has an impact on others. And so next time, we're going to pick up on that topic, okay, and clarify why is it that our author decided to add this under the topic of the talebearer, of Lashon Hara, okay? And what implications can it have even for today, okay? So I thank you, those that were able to tune in, and we hope that we'll get some of the technical glitches repaired in time for other shiurim. Thank you.